I'm Ted Becker. This is the December meeting of the Mount Vernon Model Railroad Clinic. This is a function of the 4th Division PNR and MRA. I'm ready for Jim to start if Jim's ready.
Let me first introduce myself. I'm Jim Betz. I live in Burlington, and that's the Burlington Depot in the 20s behind me that you're looking at now. I was raised in Anacortes from the late 40s through to the early 60s. And then I left the area and went to school in San Francisco, met the love of my life, had my job in San Jose, etc., and moved back here to the beautiful Pacific Northwest 2 years ago. So that's who I am. I've been a Great Northern modeler since the middle 80s. I'm now finally building my own layout. I was a member of a club in San Jose and didn't have the space in the house to build a layout anyway. So I'm building my layout, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm approaching my layout with the methods that are being promoted in the LD SIG, mostly by Byron Henderson. And he says that getting your layout up and running, first you have to have a good plan, and the way you do the plan is you go through conceptual, structural, and detail. So these are the highlights of the layout. The concept for the layout is simple. I looked at a lot of different concepts, and I finally came up with this. Great Northern in Skagit County, 1946 to 1955, approximately. And I'll explain some more about that later. So just to get you oriented to where you are and what my layout models, this is Burlington. This line is the rail to trail, which is essentially the old Great Northern line that went up to concrete and actually beyond, okay? But I'm modeling concrete, Burlington. I have one industry area that goes in here. It'll be Lyman/Hamilton. And then out the Anacortes Branch from Burlington, out this way, and etc. I'm just going to go over the highlights of the layout design elements that I ended up with, not all the ones that I considered. So one of the more important things is the old Great Northern Baker River Bridge that was in concrete. It was a Pratt truss. These are the old piers supports. So it ran from here to here. And on this side, it was a deck truss. Okay, then on the south end of the Burlington Yard, there's the still existing Skagit River Bridge built by the GM and is now used by the BNSF. The Swinomish Slough Swing Bridge. This is a Great Northern Historical Society reference sheet on when they replaced it in the early 50s, so that you can really see it. This is the open position. North of Burlington, there's a place where used to be Highway 99. It's now called Old Highway 99. And in the early 50s, they replaced the overpass. This vehicle over here is going across the temporary crossing. And this is another one. So they had one for each direction. Burlington Hill. I live up here, right about here. And including that, this is part of the Burlington Wye. So here's the Wye itself. So out here is where the Skagit River Bridge is, the Warren Truss. This is out to Anacortes here, out to concrete here. Here's the Wye. It goes out this way to Anacortes and goes out this way to concrete, going through Cedar Woolley first. There's the Burlington Depot. And I'm hoping to construct a scale model full size. It's an interesting depot because it kind of sits in the middle of the Burlington Yard. There's track on both sides of it, and it's not just like a depot track. The yard splits behind it. The Anacortes pulp mill, this is the mill, this is Cap Sandy Harbor, and this is what the mill looks like in the 50s. This is the entrance road into the mill. Anacortes Depot, again, I'm hoping to construct this, scratch build it, whatever I have to do. There is a small yard that sits over here in this area. Port dock of Anacortes. So this is the port dock here, and this is Commercial Avenue in Anacortes. Commercial Avenue for the longest time, and it may still be true, was the longest perfectly straight main street in America. And the route of the railroad, here's the pulp mill here, and here they're storing logs that are going to be used in the pulp process. But the railroad came across way out here, comes down around there, and then here you can see it went out across this little section of the bay. Hidalgo Bay is here, and that has all been filled in now, and this is where Cap Sandy Marine is. And then it comes on across and around here and right across just behind the Port Dock building and across here. And there's even here a railroad access, the little tiny spur on the pier. I'm going to be doing timetable and train order. However, timetable and train order on these two branches is pretty simple stuff. It's all Form 19, and it's mostly going to be one train at a time. Okay, so take a look at this room. Okay, notice there's a door here, window, double window, sliding door, big open portal to this area over here, which is a kitchen, an open window pass-through kind of thing here. And then there's 3 or 4 more openings on this end. So I did layout design by stacking up the moving boxes, cutting some of them up into pieces, and laying them around and trying it over and over until I came up with the plan. So this is the room empty. Just had this carpet installed in early February. I'm ready to start construction. Here's some plywood. And these are those openings that are at the other end that you couldn't see in the prior picture. This is a storage room, a closet around this corner into here. Behind this closet is the electrical, mechanical room for the house, another closet, and a doorway here, 2 rooms and a bathroom out there. So here's my track plan. And this is more or less the way I'm building it. So here's the Burlington yard. In order to get it to be long enough, I had to bend it, even though the real Burlington yard was straight. This is the Burlington Wye. Here's the Vancouver helix. This one is the Everett helix. Out here is the Anacortes Branch. And this over here is the concrete branch. The Baker River Bridge goes right here. I started construction on the 15th of February. This is why I am far enough that I can say I'm laying track and wiring now, just 9 or 10 months later. This is 80/20 extruded aluminum. They're 8 feet long, a 1x1 or a 1x2. I use some of each, depending on where I was. And then there's all kinds of connectors and stuff that 80/20 makes. And they have these little universal nuts. They're a piece of steel with a hole through them that is threaded, and these bolts that just bolt into it. So you can take the nut and you can slide it into this slot, and then you just put a bolt through it and you lock it in place. It's really simple, it's quick, and the aluminum is very light to work with. I had 2 swing gates made. This one is what I call the Y gate, and that's because it's near the Burlington Wye, which would be right here in this area, extending out here. There's a thing called a receiver here that's a triangular piece This base I just built out of stock 80/20. And then over here, this is the actual hinge. These two are the hinges. All of that comes and you just put it together. So here it is upside down and backwards. And you can see here is the receiver. And over here is the hinge. And it's slightly open here. This is sort of the first bare bones of the layout plan. So wherever you see one of these aluminum vertical pieces going up high like this, that's going to be a backdrop. So this is aisle here. This is the aisle for the Anacortes Branch. Over here, you can see the basics of the concrete branch that runs all the way around and comes back in. This is still Anacortes Branch here. And just below it, behind this, is where the Burlington yard is. And it starts way over here and wraps all the way around. And there's a helix down here in this area. This is quite a bit later. Here's my staging. The yard sits up on top at this level. And the plywood isn't there now because I'm working on laying the track and the wiring. The staging is one staging loop that comes in. It's 5 tracks wide. So it goes in here and goes around the bottom layer of the helix and comes back out this way. And then there's a Y switch, or well, I'll call it a loop switch right in here. Here's the basics of how I built the helixes. This is one in its completed state. Here's how I did it. First, I built a box that was sitting on 3/4 inch ply that is sitting on the carpet. There's no holes through the carpet. Nothing is attached. It just sits on feet. On top of this box, I put this circle. This is about 24 inches wide, and it goes all the way around. And you can see I've got little wings stuck out here to support that. This is all of this material is all 3/4 ply. And now here I'm starting to go up with the helix. It's 1/2 inch ply. This is cork that I'm going to use. And then here's a completed helix. This is actually 2 different helixes. This is the Vancouver helix and this one is the Everett. And you can see this blue tape going here. That's my reverse loop in stage. Okay, my wiring. This is a very simple connector. It's similar to a suitcase connector, except that you don't have insulation piercing. You have to strip the wires. And these little tabs here, you pull them up, put the wire in. It's stripped about 1/3 to 1/2 inch. This is 14 gauge. This is 24 gauge. So this is the running bus, and this is a feeder. So this is what it looks like after getting close to completion. So every one of my blocks has a block feeder pair that runs down in 2 different colors. And here's a detail of it. There's one of those Wago 221s. Notice that I'm using this coax cable connector thing support. These are 2 more here. And so the wire comes in through here and then bends 90 degrees, although it doesn't look like it. Then it's clipped into the Wago. And here's one color. It's the white. And then this color is the dark or the black in this case. And so here's one feeder going up to, and here's the other one goes up here. NCE radio. This is the wire to the NCE antenna, which is on top of this particular vertical post. I'm going to assist staging with LCC. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but this is a node. This is a block occupancy. This is the driver for the switch machine. It's a stall motor driver. This is a block occupancy. This is a node. This is another node. This is a computer interface. Oh, there's a PowerPoint. Yeah, it just doesn't have this is plugged into it to provide power. This is the wall wart. And here's the topology of LCC. I'm not going to go into the details of this. Okay, Burlington Yard. So it starts here. This is the location for the depot, which is, again, right about here. And then it bends around this corner, goes all the way down here. And when it disappears around this corner, it enters into the Everett Helix area and goes around and around to go down. But it doesn't go all the way down to this level, which is staging. It only goes down one turn above that. And then you'll see that differently. Here's the Burlington Wye. Okay, this goes out to concrete. This is coming to Anacortes. And the main line going to Vancouver comes here. And this is the Vancouver Helix. Here's the Wye. It's a little bit easier to see about how it's going to work here. This should be a straight line from where the depot is all the way up to here, but it didn't end up that way. I have to have this curve. Most of the curves on the layout are like 38 or 44 inches diameter. Here's that same area viewed from the other way. So the depot is out here. And here is the Y going out to the Anacortes Branch. Burlington Hill, what I'm going to do here, this is that same area all messy with a whole bunch of stuff piled on top of it, which is on top of the helix. Here's where the helix comes in and dives in under this top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print out topo map of the Burlington Hill. I'm going to cut out 5 or 6 or maybe at most 7 layers of pink foam and then stack them one on top of the other on the contour lines. And then it'll be positioned more or less over this access hole. But that access hole there's nothing to lift out because this is just going to be the hill. After I get it all stacked up, I'm going to carve it to the actual contours of the real Burlington Hill. Here's the Anacortes Branch in more detail. This is that gate. When I showed you the first picture of a gate, there's a gate here. That's the Y gate. Runs down this wall. This is that pass-through area to the kitchen. Runs down this wall and then across here, this is the Swinomish Slough Bridge, which is also on a swing gate. It comes around here. This is the pulp mill area. These tracks are indicators. They are not where the actual track is going to be. This is where the depot will be, and there will be a small yard here, and et cetera. All of this is accessed from this side, coming back into it. So trains are going to originate here on the Anacortes Branch. They will originate here in Burlington Yard, come around here, work the pulp mill, work the depot yard, et cetera. That's a place to store cars while you're working the rest of it. Port dock is here. And this is the Guemes Channel, salmon canneries. There's what the Swinomish Slough Bridge is going to be like. That's an overland brass bridge. This part of it won't actually be there because this is sort of the pier. It's all just simulated right now. But this is the part of the pier that the swing bridge would be on if it was in the open position. If you remember that picture from earlier. This is the helix here, right? The trains are going around and around and around here, and then they come out here and go around. And so there underneath all of this is that layer that gets to staging. That's the old control box that actually is still in use and still working on the Swinomish Slough. This is the area where the pulp mill will go and some of the yard area and et cetera. I'm not able to do everything exactly like it was. So this is one of those areas where I can't do the real thing. The bridge will be in a permanently closed position, meaning that the slough runs this way, it will always be in this position. So there'll be a pier for landing on this side and another one on this side, and that, but those are like, you know, they just end right here, and it connects to the track that goes on either side. And then here we have the depot area and the port dock area. It's right in here. Start wrapping around the corner, and when we come around the corner, we get to where all of the Guemes Channel canneries and Anacortes are. So the view for the Anacortes Branch is always from the south, right? So you're running here out across this. This is that access to staging that I was talking about. So you're always viewing it from the land side. Here's the concrete branch. So the concrete branch is this part that's in this funny L shape here. It starts here and comes out here. There'll be a lumber mill here. Again, this is representational. It's not the actual track that will be there. But notice that the track comes around here, okay? And this is the edge of the benchwork right about this line. It's not shown on here, but it's right about this line right here. So the track is going to go behind the mill. Then here it comes close out in front, and the first concrete plant is here, cement plant. That would be the one on the west side of concrete. And it goes across the Baker River Bridge. And then here is the east side. And on this one, the track will be behind. So structures are here, structures are behind here, structures are in front here. And that'll all be worked out so that you can get in there and work and switch stuff and et cetera. So lumber mill, this is the Lyman Hamilton. So the route of the track comes around behind these boxes. And then here, the track will come across the front here. And there was a small yard here. Over on this side, this is the concrete depot or representational. And we have the Baker River Bridge. So this is the actual bridge. It's another overland brass bridge. And here's the view looking north. This was taken from the current Highway 20 bridge. So here's that pier that I showed you before of the Baker River. And the way this is going to work is, notice this red/black line that goes across here. So this whole upper part here all gets cut away. And the bridge will sit in the middle of this. And this is actually going to be a lift out because I can't block this exterior door. You know, if I ever have an inspector over, he's going to say, wait a minute, that's a fire hazard. Well, it just lifts out. And then finally, here's the east concrete. So the bridge is over here. This is the edge of the box, actually. And so it's going to be over here, and the structures will be along the front, and the track runs along the back. And that's it. Any questions?
So Jim, this is Dick Stivers, and it's really interesting, the aluminum frame. It reminds me of the Gilbert erector set I had as a kid.
It's actually sold under the name the Erector Set of Model Railroading. And that's Engineered Layout Systems. It's a guy that is in Minneapolis, St. Paul. It's really interesting stuff because it's extremely strong. The 1x1s over an 8-foot length have a deflection of something like 3,000. So it's completely rigid, and most of my horizontal supports are done with 1x2s. So I don't have any deflection of those at all.
Same question again on the aluminum. Does the manufacturer have brackets that could be used to mount it to a wall?
Yes, in fact, some of those are mounted to the wall. So here you can see that it's just there. That one is freestanding because this one here is freestanding, and all of these along this wall are, because I have this big window, but I also have a sort of a 18-inch or so tall window box kind of affair that runs across it. You can think of it as a shelf for knickknacks. This is the other end of the same wall. So I have these here, but you see here, there's a bracket tied to the wall. Here's more, okay? So one of the really important pieces that I've used a lot this is called a 1x1. It's actually, quote, 1 inch by 1 inch with one hole in each leg. It's a perfect 90-degree bracket, and it attaches like this. You know, you just use this special nut and a bolt that's about a 1/2 inch long, and I think it's a 1/4 20 bolt, and you just put it in there, slide it to wherever you want it, tighten it down with an Allen wrench. I use a T-wrench. This is another kind of bracket. This is a perfect 90 degrees where you're going through, and I have some places on the layout where I've done that. Here's a 45-degree where the nut to connect them together, you know, this can be mounted right on any of the pieces of aluminum. Here's one of these 1x1s right here, mounted right here. I mount them like that, and then I just go up through it on one leg with a screw to hold the plywood in place.
Hey, Jim, this is Lee. Question, first of all, I really like this benchwork. This is just exquisite. Question I have for you, something to think about, and with your helix, if I understand it right, on Burlington Hill, you're going to use the pink foam above the helix. I'm wondering if you thought about perhaps using hard shell so that it's hollow inside and you can use that for access to get inside. I don't know if you can duck under and get inside your helix, but I have found that useful on my layout.
Here, if you see this, okay, this is a crawl through. Gets me inside of it. The foam will be here, but it's not going to be solid sheets. It's going to be rings that are stacked one on top of another. But I don't really expect to be crawling up into Burlington Hill because there's nothing up there but trees in my era. There are no houses on Burlington Hill then.
I was just wondering about head bumps and that sort of thing when you're accessing the helix.
Okay, so I have a short 24-inch stool inside both helixes. I have two of them, and I can sit on that and I'm not bumping my head on the top. So it's a 24-inch tall by 24-inch wide crawl through. There's one of those crawl throughs in each helix. This is what it looks like before the base goes on top of it. And then when I built the rings, I cut the rings out of plywood using a piece of aluminum and a jigsaw. And it was like 38, 44 inches long, and a hole in the end of it that I stuck a nail down through and just drilled a hole in the plywood. I could cut an arc with it without any problem. It just gave me it was just like a compass, and it worked very well. And then these are 1/2 inch. Wherever there's a break, because the arcs are, you can see the breaks. What you can't see is that underneath that is a 1/4 inch plywood splice plate that crosses those two. So I actually had the whole thing sitting right on the base, and it went right around the outside edge. These are about 6 inches wide. And then I drilled right down through the plywood and through this plywood. I drilled through the whole stack of these all at one time. And then I opened them up to the outside on both sides, okay? And then these have aluminum bar stock that goes across underneath here. And I made sure that none of them went down through wherever there was a splice plate, except I had to have like 1 or 2 in each of the helixes. I just couldn't avoid them all and have them evenly spaced.
How do you cut the bar stock?
Okay, that's a DeWalt 12-inch compound miter, and it's on a big, about 6 feet long base. That's how I cut the aluminum, the extruded aluminum, and also the bar stock, which was only like 1/8 inch thick aluminum bar stock. It's essentially a chop saw.
What kind of blade?
I got a special blade, a 12-inch diameter saw with 100 plus teeth around it, and it cuts that aluminum just beautifully.
And what do you use those thin bar stocks for?
The thin bar stock is only used under the helix to reduce my vertical depth. I don't have any of that around here, you know, in the layout support stuff at all. See how this stuff attaches? These are floor brackets. This is for a 1x1, this is for a 1x2, and these 4 holes have these things in them, like this, that just slide into the aluminum. And then these ones at the base are meant for screws. But I don't screw them through. There's a plywood foot underneath these. Big plywood base here. I have a big one here because it has to tie this, you know, the receivers here attached to this support and then to the rest of the layout. So I wanted to make sure I had good rigidity there because I couldn't attach it to a wall like I did this, you know. That's got bolts right here, here, et cetera, to go right through the sheetrock and all the way, you know, they're like 1/2 inch by 2 inch lag bolts that support this whole plywood plate that holds the hinge. And that's supporting all of the weight of this thing. This is 38 inches across here. It's a good, nice space. And that's because this right here is the main access to the crew lounge area and to my wife's art room. You've got to be able to carry stuff in and out of there. Here's the other gate, right? That's this gate right here. So we've got this whole long aisle that goes down here. Here's another swing gate here. And then this is the crew lounge. The helix is kind of in here too. And then my wife's art room is way off to the right. So she's got to be able to get down there and back and et cetera. We could have had an entire apartment down there, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a full bath. People talk about downsizing. So I moved here in my middle 70s and I supersized. I went from a 2,400 square foot house to a 4,400, but that gave me room for the layout.
How do you attach the plywood to the aluminum? I might have missed that.
That's those little 1x1 L brackets, mostly.
Okay, very clean.
Yes, it is. And it's very easy to do and quick. Now that I'm into wiring, everything has slowed way down in terms of visible progress.
Yeah, this is what in house construction is called making a showing. The framing goes up real quickly. All the finishes take forever.
Yep. So all of my railroad surface, this is a piece of the plywood. This is all 3/4 7-ply. They tell me it's 2 good sides, but they're not the same. You know, one side is definitely better than the other by a lot. This would be used in cabinetry where you only need one side. That's the kind of plywood that it is.
Are you planting cork under all your track?
No, the Anacortes and Concrete branches, the track is going to be right on top of the pink foam. The Burlington yard and all of the staging area is all homosote, and the track is right to the homosote. For the main line that goes through the yard, the north-south main, the Everett to Vancouver route, I'm going to put cork road bed under that to elevate it just that 1/4 inch, just enough to make it stand out. And I'll probably also use a different color ballast there than the rest of the yard.
Did you do a cost comparison of what building your benchwork with the extruded aluminum costs versus, say, traditional method of using dimensional lumber and plywood?
I didn't do a direct cost analysis. This is probably 2 or 3 times as expensive especially these fittings, this stuff here, that stuff is all pretty expensive pieces because it's not a universal thing. You have to order it from the company 8020 that's 8020.net anyway. 8020 is the company that makes this. And so they have their own plant building this stuff. These pieces, these are milled. They're cast, but they're also milled. And it's gorgeous stuff. And it's so, the 90s are 90. Like right here, this piece here is just a little angle brace that would go in a corner across something like this. Those 45s, they are perfect. You can take 4 pieces of this stuff of equal length and put it together and you'll have a perfect rectangle or square or whatever. Once I saw how easily this stuff goes together, I knew that I had made the right decision because I have done all of this progress. These later pictures where you saw the staging yard with the track and everything and all the aluminum is all done. On the 15th of February this year, I had no layout. That was that empty room with the carpet in it. And you can see where I've gotten. And actually, I was pretty much benchwork complete in August. And that's fast for one person working by himself.
Jim,
Jim,
did you
is it-
design
your-
your framing by hand, or did you use some kind of CAD program?
The track plan was done using Third Planet. I actually contracted with a guy in Florida who does it as a sort of a side business. And I had him do that because I bought the software myself and I started working on it and I got pretty good at it. But I also knew that it was taking me a lot of time. And I was going to be 3 or 4 months before I had a plan, and this guy was turning them out in a week or 2. And when I had modifications, they would come back to me in 3 days. I will also say that it was really, really important to me that I did my layout design by moving boxes thing. Because if I hadn't done that, I would not have had a plan that accommodates as much of this area. And this is very heavily based on the actual GM. The Baker River Bridge, that was a Pratt truss, etc.
I think the question was, did you draw a plan of the benchwork?
No, because I worked from the Third Planet. So I built to the Third Planet benchwork design, but it didn't have the actual details of the benchwork. It just had the tops.
Any other questions or comments?
One more, Jim, if I might. Your helices, diameter and grade.
Their radius is 44.5. One of them is 4 turns, but it doesn't go all the way down to the staging level. And they're all in the 1.5 to 1.7, somewhere in that range. And I'm going to be mostly steam. So, but also my train's running, this is not a mainline layout. It's a couple of small branches. We have the Anacortes Branch and we have the Concrete Branch. These 2 branches did not move cars from Anacortes to the Concrete Branch or vice versa, with one exception in my era. And that was when they built the refineries on March's Point. When they built that, they used a lot of concrete, a lot of cement, and that did get from concrete to Anacortes. However, the way that happened is the cars all moved into Burlington Yard, and then on a different train, they went out to the Anacortes Branch to build the refineries.
Jim, do you know what year the cross track at the Wye there was removed?
It's pretty late, Burr. I'm going to guess that it was at least mid-70s, and that could be much more recent than that. It could be the 90s or later. It was never used for very much at all because they didn't just run straight across here for any reason.
Right.
Freight didn't travel from one branch to the other. And so that was what the Y really did is it allowed them to turn a locomotive. It was a holdover from the steam days, but they also turned locomotives and et cetera. Neither branch ever had a Y at the end of it or any way to turn a locomotive at the end. There wasn't any way on either of the branches actually to turn a locomotive.
Excellent work, Jim. Enjoyed that.
You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
great layout, and you've just done a tremendous amount of work in a short time.
Yes, it really helped. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'd been watching Jack Burgess build his layout of the Yosemite Valley and other layouts similar to that. And I found out when I was doing this layout how important it is and how helpful it is to have a layout that is prototype based. And so I did a heavy amount of soul searching on various fantasy plans and et cetera before I settled on this basic concept. But once I had the concept, it was really a matter of accepting the fact that you can't do it all. And so you just have to do selective compression until it hurts.
Rich Blake put a question in the chat saying, how many operators are you expecting for sessions?
I'm going to have 2 people in Burlington Yard. One is a yard switch job and one is a yard master who will have some duties. And then there will be a 2-man crew for the Anacortes Branch and a second 2-man crew for the concrete branch. And then I'm going to add in some kind of a dispatcher / staging operator. That's probably going to be me. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing the TT&TO that I'm doing, because I'll actually be able to write up the order ahead and just fill in things like the engine number and the date and hand it to them as part of their operator packet that I'm going to give them. So 6, 7, I expect never to have 2 trains on either of the branches at the same time. So they will get an order that says, go to concrete, and there may be work on the way to concrete, but they own the track from Burlington to concrete. And when they are done working in the concrete area and ready to start back, they will contact dispatch at the station that was there and get an order to come back to Burlington. I'm hoping to have my ops be continuous ops so that wherever you are at the end of the ops session, you will leave your train right where it is. And the next session, somebody will pick that train up and run it from there. I know, that's a dream.
That's the dream.
Yeah. I happen to be well enough experienced at ops and setting up ops and operating as an operator on very complicated ops to know that it's always a moving target.
So I think that about wraps it up. And
Merry
thank
Christmas,
you very
everybody.
much, Jim, for doing the clinic.
Oh, no problem.
Bye.